Hello, everybody. So can everybody hear me okay? Everybody who expects to be able to hear me okay? Just so I've got an idea for the audience, who here has a developer background? Cool. Who's a kind of designer? Who's a product person? Who's in any group that I haven't already mentioned? Come see me later, you're really interesting. So I'm going to be talking about cognitive accessibility. I suppose I should probably crack on with it. I may need to explain why some of these slides are a bit weird later, but we'll get to that when I get to it. So just to give a quick heads up, I actually find one-to-one speech quite difficult. In fact, I quite often use assistive communication for speech. And the way that I do presentations is I kind of pretend that nobody exists. So it's not you, it's me. But if you walk up to me afterwards and I have trouble with a bit of speech, you know, I'm not being rude. Although if you do see me then talking to someone else afterwards, then I might have just decided you were boring. But probably I'm not being rude. Probably. So I'm Jamie, and this is Lion, and I'm not wearing either my signature ear defenders or my jumper today, so this entire talk is off. That's it, I'm going home. I'm autistic, and I work for the BBC. Basically, that's it about me for the context of this talk. So before I get into the talk properly, a really important disclaimer. I'm going to be talking about autistic life and how I approach modeling cognitive needs. But I'm one person talking about how I approach it. This is anecdote, and there's no way that I can represent all autistic people. Hell, half the time I can't even represent myself. So everybody, that's just way too out of scope. I've also got somebody I really like in the audience. So like, hi, hey, I'm not nervous. And finally, as the last disclaimer, over here is Gareth, who is my line manager. He's basically there to stand up and shout.
This is not the opinion of the BBC.
If I say something really ridiculous, okay? So that's the setup for today. This is being streamed live on the internet. Am I fired yet? No, good. Okay, so I'm currently not fired. Let's see how long we can keep that to be the case. So to give a tiny bit of history, this talk was first done for CSUN in 2015. No, you write, put dozens of hours into a talk and it doesn't go anywhere. And then you write one talk in 10 minutes and it's the most popular talk you ever did. That's one of these. I wrote it over a lunch break because I forgot I was meant to be presenting it. So it's been refined a bit since then, but that's kind of the history of this talk. And I mention that because it came out of not an academic or a work experience thing, just trying to get out of my head how I use things as an autistic person. So this isn't academically based. This is all concepts and ideas, and basically something I pulled out my butt one day. So, treat it with the amount of salt that requires. That's a horrible mental image. So there's 3 bits of this talk. I want to talk about modeling disability, and then I want to talk about the cognitive access model, and then I want to look a little bit towards the future. So modeling disability, what are the things we're aiming to do? So when people ask me what my team do, I say, our goal is to make sure our websites, apps, and services don't disable people. Then I sometimes give them a creepy smile, because I can't do a normal smile. And I go, oh, cool, yeah, that makes sense. And then I get, what? Hang on, don't you work for disabled people? Isn't accessibility about disabled people? And I say, no, we build things that don't disable people. And they give me that weird, okay, look. And then I get to go, disability has many lenses. And I say that normally we look at disability like a microscope. We look at disability as the topic to be inspected. But for this talk, we're kind of turning it around and saying, what's the disability perspective coming back outwards? Which sounds really pompous and probably translates really badly. I don't know. So that's what this is about. So I want to first of all define what I mean by disability so that we can then unpick it a bit later. So disability, before I can define disability, I need to define impairment. We have vision impairment, hearing impairment. This is known as the San Diego impairment, and this is the Friday night impairment. There are many different types of impairment. Some of them are permanent, some of them are mild, some of them are severe. Some of them will last a long time and have low impact. Some of them will last only a day but be life-changing. So there's much change to different types of impairment. We then have the environment, and the environment is the stuff that's built around us. This is the attitudes and opinions we hold about each other. I was going to say habits, but have you tried finding an icon for habit? That's the best I could come up with. Well, at least it wasn't a sympathy laugh this time, Gareth. you know. So also the attitudes and beliefs we hold about each other are part of the environment in which we live in. And part of the environment is also expectations. So if you have a low expectation for someone, it can be a problem. And if you have a high expectation for someone, it can be a problem. So they're built into the environment. What we expect disabled people to be capable of is built into the assumptions we have about them. Ask any one of our friends here what happens if you're a wheelchair user and you get out of your wheelchair in public, for example. Or if you're somebody who normally doesn't speak, who then says one word, everybody around you assumes you were faking the whole time, not that you were really tired, and the word that you said was cake, because everybody needs cake. At one stage, most of my communication was different ways of pronouncing the word cake. It was lemony goodness. So impairment and environment, they equal disability. To say disability is the mismatch between the two. And I think we're going to cover that a lot today. You've probably already heard that once today. And this is generally known as the social model of disability. Or another way of putting it is, as designers, we disable people when we don't get it right. So I sometimes describe this to friends or colleagues as like running around with a digital hatchet, and just as you wouldn't walk up to a user and go, "Hi," thonk, and hop off a limb, you probably shouldn't do it digitally. Although when I started taking hatchets to meetings to say, "Hey, why don't you just behave in the real world as you do in the digital world?" I started to get frowned upon. I don't think Gareth found out about that. No, he didn't. Nothing happened. Nobody died, lion didn't eat anybody, I promise. So yeah, as designers we disable people when we get it wrong, and I get it wrong a lot because, well, I'm still learning, and it's really hard to design for users that aren't ourselves. So yeah, as I said, I was thinking about this once, and I was kind of thinking, not what are the right answers, because I say this kind of quietly, because there are at least 2 people in the room, 3 people. I kind of think guidelines are a bad idea. They don't really work. Because you're telling people the answer rather than giving them the questions to ask themselves. So from that perspective of, I can't be bothered to read all those guidelines, which is what that kind of boils down to. I'm an accessibility specialist, and even I can't remember our own guidelines half the time. Still employed? Cool, haven't been fired yet. So I was trying to think, how do we structure good questions about our experiences, and then good questions about the interactions that we have. And then that's where the cognitive access model came from. So the cognitive access model is really quite simple. So my suggestion is that everybody, through every situation, whether they have a cognitive impairment or not, is kind of going through this loop constantly of receiving, processing, and actioning information. So I'm seeing information of this black dot in front of my vision. I'm processing it, going, what is it? What can I do with it? What are the affordances? And then I'm making an action, for example, deciding it's not ice cream, so I'm not going to try and lick it, for example. So we go through this process constantly. It's how we build up the understanding of the world around us. So that's all well and good, and I could go, thank you very much, goodbye, there's your model. But I think it actually breaks down into things that are more concrete. So for most of this talk, I'm going to break this down and give you some examples of good and bad practice for each part of this. Make sense so far? Cool. Somebody shakes their head. I love that. I love that. The honesty is great. So when we're receiving information, I think there's 2 parts to receiving information. The first part is being able to perceive the information, e.g. get it into your system in the first place. And then the second part of that is being able to understand what affordances it gives you. So being able to understand the information enough to know what the list of options of the things you can do are. So for example, for perception, I'm extremely audio sensitive, and loud noises like clapping or sudden movement or alarms literally stop my ability to think. So naturally, if my house is on fire, the first thing it does is set off an alarm that stops me from being able to move, which isn't really very good. So I'm relying on the environment in communicating me in ways which are key and don't disable me. So for example, I've got this smoke alarm. It says, there is smoke building in the kitchen. The alarm may sound, the alarm is loud. And it gives me the ability to listen to that, understand it, and act on it without being disabled by the way the information is being presented to me. Or to give some game examples of this, in Gears of War, in Horde mode, have you noticed that the characters talk to you? They don't rely on sounds and beeps. So sometimes in games, when something is loaded or something is available, you'll hear a noise. I'm not going to know what that means. So I can go through entire games missing entire features and entire abilities because it wasn't communicated me into a way that I could perceive. So this sort of combination of audio and video together. Another nice thing for Gears of War is I'm very slow, and I don't know left from right. So if you tell me fire's coming from the left, I won't know what you mean. But if you make one side of the screen get a bit mucky, okay, that's where the bullets are coming from. I'll tell you what, I can't remember what it was now. I think it was in a horde match. We did sniper rifles only, and they had tracers. That was really useful, because I could tell where all the bullets were coming from, and then run away. Another good example of this, although I think you've probably just had a whole talk on this, so I won't repeat much of it, is colour blindness. If you can't perceive the information because of colour, then whether you have a cognitive impairment or not, you can't get the information into your system. So that's kind of perception, being able to pull the information into your brain, which kind of sounds like you've got a straw. Information. The second part of this is affordances. So once the information is inside your brain and you know what the information is, the data, how do you convert it from data to information? How do you go from what you're looking at into a list of things you can do? So for example, I'm currently sat here looking at you lot, and I'm going, well, I can stand here on the stage, I could probably stand on this. I probably couldn't run up the chairs, but I probably could run up the side. I'm processing the information in front of me, which I kind of regret doing now. Hello, everybody. It's a room full of people. When did that happen? Hi. So yeah, we look at environments and we work out what we can do, the affordances. So these push and pull signs, push looks like pushing, pull looks like pulling, words, text, combination of things, which is subtly different to perception. So perception needs to be there before you can have an affordance, because if you can't get the data, you can't work out what you're supposed to be able to do with it. So this is an example I think you're going to see a lot today. It's from Tomb Raider. And it's indicating with various levels of subtlety where to go to complete the next action in the game. Another good example that does this is Portal 2. This is really, really useful. Also letting me explore levels without enemies or get a good map, that sort of thing can be useful. So this is an environment that's giving me the affordances. It's saying to me, hint, hint, it's over here. So that's really good. So thank you for the Tomb Raider people. I don't remember what they look like, because I can never remember what anybody looks like. Hello! Sparkly shirt lady, there we go. I'll remember that now. Just don't change your clothing or I'll forget who you are. It's genuinely a problem with my line manager. He can change his jacket, walk past me, don't know where he's gone. Another good example is this is the original Colin McRae rally on the PlayStation, and it doesn't assume that you know left and right. I learned left and right from Colin McRae rally, and it started with this nice driving instructor school. And in later games, they changed the arrow for a number, and I had no idea where I was going, and I crashed a lot, and I didn't get better. So having games that don't assume information and then expose that affordance to me, well, the things I can do, like go left, go right, here's what's available, is very useful to me and helps me kind of understand the information that's coming in. So that's the first bit. We've received the information, we have like it held in our heads, and it's like a bucket of information that we now have to do something with. So I'd suggest that processing comes down into two steps, filtering and deciding. So you've got all of this information in your head, and then you need to kind of filter out the bits that you want, and then you need to reach some decisions. So filtering, in the real world, I have ear defenders and headphones. They filter out the information from the environment like noise that I don't care about, so that all that's left to me is the information I do care about. My headphones filter out things like background noise, but enhance speech. So if Gareth is talking to me, and I kind of want to ignore him, I can just say, yeah, it's totally in speech mode, and just listen to music or something. La, 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 la. And just nod occasionally. Still employed? Maybe. Okay. That's telling me a hint. Turn it up more. So they're filtering in the real world. And we also have sunglasses and stuff like that for filtering information from the environment in the real world. In fact, when I go shopping, I normally take my glasses off. Because if you stand me in front of a rule with 100 different types of pasta, I'm not going to have a clue what to do. But if I take my glasses off, so I have to get this close to it to go, oh, it's pasta. It's easy. I only have to choose between the one I can see. So I take my glasses off when I go shopping to reduce that amount of information. So in games, we get situations like this. This is my current Horizon 3 map, which resulted in what I can only describe as a head explode, and I stopped playing the game. Or I'd have to play it with a friend and kind of go, where do I go now? I have a feeling, I don't think Ian's in here at the moment, I may have once sent Ian this screenshot and gone, What do I do? It told me to open this thing and select the reservoir. What's the reservoir? I'm confused. And then I found out that it's got a filtering option. This is how I now play the game. I turned on the filter of next race only. So now it's just showing me the next race. So this is filtering in action. And of course, once I've filtered the information, I can then start making meaningful decisions. So, here's another good example of filtering. When it's in a game and you bring a mini game into the screen and it takes over the whole screen, so you're not trying to work out if the guard walking behind you is something you should be paying attention to. What you're doing there is you're filtering out all the other information by not presenting it to me in the first place. So this sort of thing I really like. It's really helpful to me. And then finally, of course, things like Bad North, simplifying gameplay to start off with so that there's less complexity there to start off with, because the complexity isn't a problem, it's being able to manage the complexity, being able to filter it is where I probably struggle most. It's why I get run over so often. Well, actually, I've not been run over for a while. Well, I didn't get run over yesterday. Almost got run over yesterday, but didn't. So do I get like a gold star? You survived today. Good luck tomorrow. So I don't get run over, but when cars are coming towards me, I really struggle to filter the car from the background, from the other people, from traffic going in the other direction. And by the time I've gone, maybe it's a car traveling at approximately 30 miles an hour, bam, I've been run over. So that's why I kind of rely on other people who are better at filtering. With gaming, that's having less options to begin with. So Bad North is a Switch RTS, real-time strategy game, with a very, very simple game mechanic. And that simplicity makes it much more approachable for me. It doesn't scare me off like other games where I look at the control scheme and I just can't remember it. So the second part is once I've filtered all the information, I need to be able to make a decision. So I need to be able to make a decision, and in order to make a decision, I need to be able to know what the consequences are. Cool. Just waiting for the signers to catch up. I'm just checking that's all okay. So I need to understand what the consequences are. And there are good examples of this in general design. So the ability to undo things, because that reduces the risk, it lets you explore. The ability to cancel things, clear things, long timeouts on stuff. These are all around giving me tools to make a decision. Another useful tool can be allowing me to ask somebody else for help. So I've got a little app, and I can't remember what it's called right now, which is going to really annoy me, which takes any text box on the internet, so any form, and if you get stuck, it's got a button so you can contact someone for help. And in the background, it sends a Telegram message. So I can go, I don't understand what this is asking for, click a button, and it can contact a friend and go, Jamie's filling out a form for pizza, and it's asked him for toppings. And he's selected, hunky male man. Too much? Sorry, I don't know where that one came from. My brain's in weird places today. Unfiltered speech, that's fun. Oh, by the way, I'm gay, in case you didn't notice. I've got other thoughts on my mind by the seemings of things. Wow, that's distracting. You can hit a button and you can see, it can ask somebody for help. So that sort of thing, giving me a long timeout enables me to get help. So in a gaming context, I really love memory cards because they are the ultimate undo feature. If I screw it up, I can just reload it. Or, if you're like me and you don't like auto-saving, you have something like a PlayStation 1, and you have a bank of memory cards, and you have known good games on the memory card, and you happen to know that a PlayStation 1 doesn't freak out if you pull the memory card out after it's loaded. So you start the game, pull the memory card out, play for a bit, and if it goes wrong, press the reset button, and problem solved. The whole 5 minutes of screwing up doesn't exist. That gives me the safety to play games and not worry about screwing up hundreds of hours of effort because I've misunderstood something. Because I misunderstand things all the time in hilarious ways, although I'm trying to think of some examples right now. Have you got any off the top of your head? I'm trying to think of things I've misunderstood that were funny. A great example being, most people will go and pick up a saucepan by, the handle. For some reason, I'll go pick it up by the big round bit. My brain just doesn't notice. So things like that. But also, I might confuse, no Gran Turismo racing game. I used to do things like I would confuse the back button and the buy button. So I'd hit the buy button, not the back button, because I used to play between Nintendo and Sony, which swapped the two buttons. And then I'd panic and try and go back, and then I'd end up buying something for all of my credits, lose all of my money, and have a car that I can't use for the next race, and get myself into a position where I couldn't complete the game. because of a bit of finger futzing. That's a technical term, that. Futz, not anything sweary, just a word that I made up. So, that finger, I've hit the wrong button. So having a memory card system that I can reliably and in my own control go, just pretend that didn't happen, put it back in. I do a lot of playing on the PlayStation 1. It's just a little box under my telly. It doesn't need updates. It doesn't download anything off the internet. You turn it on. It normally works. It's 20 years old, and it's more reliable than every other piece of hardware I've got. So one thing I just want to kind of spear off to on a sideways thing, and I'm going to slightly back down from this because this might be slightly controversial. The exit is on that side. I didn't think that through. Somebody might say, yeah, but you're cheating. What are you doing? You're destroying the game mechanic. And I might say that it depends on what your definition of difficulty is. So when I was thinking about this, I decided that difficulty is the rate at which I waste energy on things I don't value. So difficulty to me isn't related to fun. They are separate concepts. If it's at the point where I can't do it, I'm going to stop because I don't have enough energy. If it's like play another game, play another level of the game, or cook and eat dinner tonight, cooking and eating dinner will normally win. Not always, but normally. So difficulty is this idea that I'm going to be wasting energy. How do I minimize that wasted energy to get the maximum amount of reward and fun? Or to put it another way, the difficulty settings, they adjust the number of game elements needed before I'm feeling that I'm wasting energy. So that's kind of my thoughts on difficulty. Anybody feeling at all stabby? No? Cool, that's less contentious than what I thought it was. And I edited out all of the swear words. Oh, damn. So anyway, back to the main talk. So for example, if you look at Forza, the difficulty isn't a medium, small, easy, hard. It's much more fine-grained. You're adding in and taking out game elements. So on a day where I can't feel my fingers properly, I can turn on the traction control and the braking assist, so I can still have a fun race, because I'm there for fun racing, not to be twiddling with my fingers. And on a day when I'm feeling quite anxious and I just want to go round the track, lap after lap after lap, and forget about the world, I can have my steering wheel out and do it properly. So it's that adjustability within the game to keep it fun, rather than to say, I've achieved medium, because I don't know if you know this, but you don't actually get any real-world awards for completing games on harder levels. Like, has people noticed this? You get this little thing pop up. The first time my Xbox went, you've had an achievement. I took a photo of it and showed my mum. I was like, look, I've got an achievement, because I thought they were rare. And it was like, you turned on the console, have an achievement. You breathed in and out properly, have an achievement. So I then kind of went, okay, these aren't really that important. I still have that. My mum framed the photo, which I think is great. It also says quite a lot about the number of achievements I've had in my life. Probably comments more about me than it does about her. It's right up there next to my bronze swimming certificate. Oh yeah. So here's a wishful example talking about difficulty and complexity. I would really love for Zelda to have a no enemy mode, because I love Zelda, but I agree. I love Zelda. I want to explore Zelda. But if I don't have the energy, it's a complete barrier. And it's a pointless barrier, because I don't get anything from fighting them. I don't have the finger control to use the arrow. I don't have it's got the move controller to aim thing that you can turn on and off. I don't have that ability. So if I want to go for a quick explore, find some more tombs. So I quite like to explore, find some shrines and come back and do them later when I'm more able. It gives me a thing I can do. But if there are level 250 enemies around, I just can't do it. I have to avoid them, and I spend the whole game avoiding enemies that don't really need to be there. Although I've just been told that Assassin's Creed something, Origins, that's the one. This whole idea of tacking words onto the end of games, I just get so confused. Also, when Origins comes out after the first one, and you're like, but it's a prequel of a sequel of my head's exploded. So yeah, Assassin's Creed Origins has an exploring mode where you can go on an educational walk. That's great for me, because I can learn the controls, I can have a play, I can get used to that aspect, and then slowly ramp up the difficulty, which is effectively what I did with Forza, through many, many, many hours. So a game that does this really well. I have a Nintendo Switch, and I often play Worms with Ollie, which is basically losing at Worms to Ollie constantly in hotel rooms across the world. We've played some Switch, and I've lost. So these days, I just cheat. I have 5 or 6 worms, he has 4. That started to level things out a bit. So that keeps it fun, because I can play with an advantage that will level the field. Like playing golf with a handicap. Similar sort of idea. So this is useful to me. This is also helping me make decisions, because when I'm in worms and I have 5 worms to play with, it doesn't matter if I accidentally jump one off the map into the ocean with a little bit of finger futzing, which happens very often. Or accidentally banana bomb myself and my entire team, which also happens quite often. So that's another way that the game mechanics can help me to decide, by changing and playing around with the concept of difficulty. So that's kind of receiving the information by being able to perceive it and then work out the affordances. You're then filtering the information and then reaching a decision. So if you've got your decision, what do I do next? Well, I need to be able to plan, and then I need to be able to do something. How am I doing for time? I'm good. Great. That's unusual. So planning. The environment needs to be able to give me time to plan to achieve the things I want to do. So when I'm crossing a road, I need to be thinking about how I'm going to move my legs, how I'm going to move my hands. Sometimes people say I walk like a robot because I'm thinking about how I'm walking, so it doesn't look very natural. I had sedation for a medical examination, which sounds really weird. They put me to sleep to stick a camera up my bum, basically. And still employed, good. And afterwards, a friend of mine who was an actor said if he ever has to play an alien driving a human body for the first time, that's what I looked like, as I had to think about every single action. And whilst I can do it, it takes time. And if something's trying to hurry me along, it's A, not fun, and B, uses a lot more energy. Like a car, going quickly isn't always very efficient. So being able to keep a sustained, usable pace. So traffic lights that count down so I can tell whether or not I'm going to get across or not. There's also planning. So I had a real hard time finding an icon for the pause menu, and then Lion had a suggestion. So this is now my icon for the pause menu going forward. I love the pause menu because it gives me thinking time. It enables me to go, whoa, what just happened? What do I think's happening? What do I do from this? Or sometimes, whoa, I need to find a grown-up. Okay, what does this mean? What do I do now? Or if I'm playing games and Ollie's there, it might be, okay, which bit do I shoot? With an arrow? Or what sort of arrow? Like, I didn't know there were 5 types of arrows. I went through most of Zelda using arrows, and then I watched Ollie play, and he had some arrows that did sparkly things. I was like, my arrows don't do that. How'd you get your arrows to do that? Oh, there's a whole button I didn't find. Cool. So the pause menu is amazing. So, for example, Command and Conquer Red Alert, which I play on the PlayStation, which is another really popular game for me to play. The Command and Conquer, it's got lots of easy-to-use cheat codes. I think my thumb knows them automatically now. So I can get unlimited money, I can build a base, and then I can rampage around the map, turn the console off, turn the console on. Really easy. That is a lot of fun. It's really playable, it's really straightforward. And if it all goes wrong, I've got the pause button. So I can go, okay, 10 people have just attacked my base, pause. I've got a way of making tanks, a way of making people. What am I going to do? I'm going to make some tanks, make some people, try and fight them off. There we go. So again, pause buttons. I love them. And then finally, there's the actual doing of things. So to bring another real-world example in, these are my bowls at home for cooking. They've got big squishy handles, rubberized bases. I always drop things. So they help me know what I'm going to, where I need to put things. And they also stack up in a really cool thing that's like looks really good on the slide. So they're one of my favorite things. They give me sensory control of how the textures and the shape and the feel of things. They give me physical access, and they're an easy-to-use tool. So my laptop was stolen just before this presentation. So if the thief is in the room, hello, please come and chat to the lion. He promises he won't kill you. If the thief is in the room, he'll kindly leave the laptop somewhere, and so that we will find it. I would massively appreciate it. It's got some data on that is worth a lot to me. So I would appreciate that. In fact, if you want to leave it, you can have the fucking laptop. Just let me have the data. So I don't know quite how you come and do that. Do you report yourself and leave the laptop somewhere where someone will find it and, I don't know, leave a name and number and we'll get back to you? I might be motivating the wrong things there. So anyway, there should be a photo of some switch controllers here, but this is my pre-do slide from about a week ago, so this is why the presentation is a little bit clumsy. So the switch controllers, a friend of mine referred to them as like the electronic Kit Kat, because it's like snapping the bars off of a Kit Kat. But they're great because I can give a controller to someone else and they can help me. Or I can sit in a way that is comfortable. So sometimes I can't feel my fingers very well. And weirdly, if I can't feel my fingers very well, I can't really find out where my arms are. So I bang my arms on things all the time. And if I'm trying to hold a little controller here, I'm going to be banging my arm on the wall. But if I can have one controller down my side and one controller in my other hand, I can get comfortable. So I really like switch controllers. They're a great example of the environment adapting so it doesn't disable me. Another good example is this wonderful thing. 5-minute warning, thank you. Those 5 minutes have been well warned. So the switch controller, where you can plug in lots of adaptive controls, we are plotting things that we can do with this to A, make my life easier, and B, make more interesting things happen for my work. If you want to talk about VR and accessibility, come chat to me. That's kind of my thing at the moment. But I actually built a Xbox-powered lighting controller that uses the Hue Smart Light. So I've got a wireless Xbox in my flat that I can use to change all the lights in my room. And I built it to work with the Xbox drivers. So this is quite interesting because I can use this to basically build myself like a lighting and house control panel. So that's quite cool. Looking forward to that. I've got distracted now, haven't I? Yeah, so gaming and accessibility. These are tools that give me the ability to access something. Because cognitive impairment and physical impairment often go together. So if you treat them as separate things, you end up with problems. So in a nutshell, I'd say that this is the model that I'd recommend for cognitive accessibility. And that's all well and good, but I said at the start I don't like guidelines. So I'd like to rephrase this as, these are the questions I think you should ask yourself when you're building things. How will our users perceive information? How will our users know what the affordances are? How will our users filter information? How will our users reach decisions? How will our users plan what they're going to do? And how will our users actually access doing it? So in a nutshell, that's the cognitive access model, which I made up in about 10 minutes. So, shh. Still employed? Good. Always a risk. So I'm going to have a very quick talk about the future and then wrap up, because I'm about to get a 2-minute warning. So I think we have this question that I come into a lot when I talk about accessibility with my colleagues, where we get into this question of what is accessibility. And I'd say that accessibility is enhancing what's considered usability to a wider group of people. So accessibility testing is really just user testing done with a representative group of people rather than being selective. So in that way, rather than going for that peak in the middle, the most common, there are more people either side of that peak. And whilst we might have diverse needs, you can often get a thing where you help, what you do to help the person who has one hand also helps somebody holding a lion or holding a baby. So there's many uses, and by making small adaptations, you can hit much larger audiences without ever really specializing for that audience. And you also have neurological diversity. So you have autism, ADHD, other collections of groups of people who benefit from more control and more flexibility within environments. So this is myself, autistic, it's neurodivergent. And we can either pretend that that diversity doesn't exist and try and normalize autistic people, or we can try and change the environment to support us. And I can tell you that the second option works way better. 2-minute warning. It's great. I look at you, you point at her, she holds up a sign. This is really good. It's like defragging a hard drive. I should just have to bounce around the... It's great. So on top of those questions from earlier, I'd say that the 3 groups that I'd be thinking about are the diverse, the impaired, and then the distracted. Because a lot of the things you do to help people with a cognitive impairment will also help people who are in a hurry, people who are tired, people who really want next door to turn off the bloody stereo. That sort of scenario. So that's the end of this talk. Thank you very much. I don't think we're doing questions. Please can we do the flappy handy clap rather than clappy clap? Yay. You know, I do this at every event and then normally I clap. So it's like, oh, Jamie. I don't know where there's time for questions. I don't think there is. No, ask me questions at the pub, bar, thing, whatever. Bye-bye. Thank you.